That line wouldn't mean much to most people. But standing there, in the back room of the auto repair shop with grease on my hands and the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air, it landed differently. It wasn't the words, it was how she said them. Soft, low, like a secret she was tired of keeping. I'd only known her for a week then. Her name was Nadia, and she came in on a Tuesday afternoon to pick up her cousin's car. I remember because she didn't belong in a place like that. Polished nails, crisp white shirt, perfume that somehow managed to cut through the smell of oil and rubber. She carried herself like she didn't need to prove anything. I think that's what threw me off. Most people here tried too hard to be heard. She didn't have to. She smiled at me in that polite, half-distracted way adults do when they think you're just another kid doing his job. I handed her the invoice, pointed at the total, and tried not to stare at the way she kept tapping her ring against the counter. Steady, rhythmic, and patient. She wasn't wearing a wedding band, but the gesture felt like a leftover habit. When her cousin, the owner of the car, joked that I should give her a discount for looking like that, she rolled her eyes and said, "He looks too young to know what that even means." I laughed, too quickly, and dropped the pen. That was the first time she looked at me properly, like she'd just realized I had a face. She started stopping by every few days after that, always with a reason, something small, something that didn't need her presence. Once, to drop off a forgotten umbrella. Another time, to ask about that sound the car was making again. But she never seemed in a rush to leave. She'd stand near the doorway, tracing circles on her coffee cup, asking questions that didn't need answer. Do you ever get tired of this smell? Do you fix the same cars over and over? Do you ever feel stuck here? I didn't know what she really wanted to know. I just liked that she asked. Sometimes she'd sit on the bench near the window while I worked. She'd read something. Never a novel, always a small notebook filled with handwriting. Once, when she got up to take a call, I caught a glimpse of a page. If I'm not careful, I'll start believing this is harmless. That line stuck with me more than it should have. The last time that week, she came alone again. Her cousin had forgotten something in the car, apparently. The shop was closing, sunlight leaking through the shutters in long stripes. She leaned against the counter, hands tucked into her coat pockets. "Do you ever get the feeling," she said quietly, "that some people walk into your life just to rearrange it?" I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. The silence stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable. The kind where both people are waiting for something they don't understand. She looked at me then, not flirtatious, not teasing, just aware. The kind of look that lingers too long to be polite. My throat went dry, and I pretended to check the clipboard. That's when her cousin appeared at the door, laughing about something on his phone, and tossed the car keys to me. "She told me to come get them," he said. "But she insisted on coming instead. Said you'd take care of it." Nadia's jaw tightened, but her cousin just grinned and added under his breath, "Nothing about me is innocent." I don't think he meant it the way I heard it, but I can still see the way her eyes flickered in that second. Guilt, amusement, something else. She didn't explain. She just said softly, "Good night," and walked out into the fading light. That was 3 months ago, and I still catch myself turning whenever the door opens, like she might walk in again. Coat half-buttoned, eyes unreadable, pretending it's harmless. ChatGPT said. She came back 2 weeks later, pretending it was about the car again. This time, the air between us already knew too much. The morning had been slow, the kind of dull gray that made even the clock tick louder. I was halfway through tightening a bolt when I heard her voice. Low, steady, unmistakable. "Hey, I didn't think you'd still be here." I looked up, and she was standing by the doorway again, her hair slightly damp from the drizzle outside. No makeup this time, just tired eyes and a soft sweater that didn't belong to her usual polished world. She smiled faintly, like an apology she didn't say. "I think the windshield wipers stuck," she said. "Or maybe I just needed a reason to drive." I wiped my hands on the rag, trying not to let the surprise show. "I can take a look." She nodded, following me to the car. The rain had left tiny silver beads across the hood. She ran her finger through them, drawing a line before quickly pulling her hand back, as if she'd touched something she shouldn't have. We stood in silence for a while. The quiet felt different now, less awkward, more aware. I noticed the small things I shouldn't have noticed. The tremor in her fingers when she tucked her hair behind her ear, the faint mark of a ring once worn but long gone. The way her laugh came too easily when she was trying to fill space. She asked me about my age, my plans, what I wanted out of this job. Not the kind of questions you ask to make conversation, the kind you ask because you're trying to remember what it felt like to want something again. When she talked about her work, her voice changed, smoother, practiced. But when she slipped and mentioned her husband in the past tense, her eyes flickered away. "Sorry," she murmured. "I didn't mean to." I shook my head. "You don't have to explain." She smiled at that, but her hands fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. I kept working on the wiper even after I'd fixed it. She leaned beside me, close enough that I could smell the faint mix of rain and her perfume. "You're quiet today," she said. "I just don't want to say the wrong thing," I replied before I could stop myself. Her gaze lingered on me, steady, unreadable. Then softer. "Maybe there isn't a right thing to say," she whispered. For a moment, the whole world felt smaller. Just the two of us standing under the open garage door, rain tapping the metal roof like a heartbeat we both pretended not to hear. When I handed her the keys, our fingers brushed. She didn't pull away immediately. Just a brief pause, barely there, but long enough to feel something cross between us, something neither of us asked for. She exhaled slowly, almost like she was letting go of something. Then, with that half-smile again, she said, "You shouldn't look at people the way you do." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but she turned before I could, stepping out into the drizzle, her reflection bending in the puddles as she disappeared down the street. The sound of her car faded, but the echo of that line stayed, quiet, electric, impossible to forget. ChatGPT said, "It was one of those evenings that felt out of time, rain tapping the glass, lights dimmed to a tired amber. I'd stayed late at the shop, finishing up a last job. The others had gone home hours ago. I didn't hear her car pull in. I only noticed the reflection in the window, a flash of her coat, then her voice behind me. 'You're still here,' she said, half surprised, half relieved." I turned. She looked different again, hair tied loosely, cheeks flushed from the cold. She held 2 paper cups of coffee, steam curling upward like a secret trying to escape. "I brought you one," she said. "Felt bad for making you fix my car twice this month." I smiled. "You don't owe me coffee." Then let's say I needed an excuse to talk to someone who doesn't expect anything from me. That line landed heavier than it should have. She handed me the cup, and our fingers met, just enough to make my pulse stumble. We sat on the low workbench, a few feet apart, listening to the rain hammer the metal roof. The smell of gasoline and rainwater made everything feel sharper, realer. She stared straight ahead, sipping slowly, lost in thought. "I used to like nights like this," she said quietly. "They felt romantic when I was younger. Now they just make me think too much." "What about?" I asked. "About how easily people drift apart," she said. "You look up one day, and the person you built a life with feels like a stranger sitting at your own table." She tried to laugh it off, but it cracked at the end. Her thumb brushed the rim of the cup, nervous. "You ever feel like that?" she asked suddenly. "I haven't lived long enough yet," I said. "But I think I understand." The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was full, heavy with everything neither of us could name. A phone buzzed in her coat pocket, loud in the quiet. She hesitated before pulling it out. I saw the name flash on the screen, Daniel, home. She turned the phone over, screen down. "You can answer," I said. "I don't want to." She said it too quickly, too certain. The rain grew louder, almost drowning her words. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw the fatigue behind her composure. The kind that doesn't come from work or age, but from holding everything together too long. "You remind me of something I lost," she said softly. My throat tightened. "What's that?" Her eyes flickered toward the window, toward the rain streaking down the glass. The part of me that used to believe things could start again. I didn't know what to do with that. My hand moved before my mind did, almost resting on hers, almost. She didn't move away, just watched my fingers tremble in the inch of space between us. Then her phone buzzed again. She blinked, pulled her hand back, and said, "I should go." I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. As she walked out, The storm cracked open the sky, lightning cutting the room in half for a second. She turned in the doorway, rain blurring the edges of her face. "Next time," she said, barely audible, "don't stop yourself." But I did. And that's what kept me awake the rest of the night. She walked into the shop on a Thursday evening, after closing, after everyone had gone. I was sweeping the floor, lights half off. When I saw her standing there, framed in the doorway's weak light, I felt the air shift. She didn't speak at first, just stood, one hand still on the door, as if she might change her mind. I could see the hesitation in the way her fingers tightened around her keys. "I didn't know where else to go," she said finally. Her voice was quieter than usual. No perfume tonight, no armor. Just a woman who looked like she'd been trying not to cry for hours. I nodded toward the workbench. "You can sit." She shook her head. "I don't want to sit. If I sit, I'll start talking. And if I start talking, I don't know where it'll stop." So we stood there, a few feet apart, the silence thick and trembling. Outside, the night was heavy and still. "After a while," I said, "you don't have to pretend with me." She laughed under her breath. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, not enough to touch, just enough for her voice to drop. "You look at me like you already know what I'm thinking. Like I'm not allowed to hide anymore." I swallowed hard. "Maybe I just see you." She met my eyes then, really met them. The kind of look that feels like it's undoing something inside you. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "It's not fair to either of us." I didn't plan to. Neither did I. We both went still. The hum of the old fridge in the back was the only sound. Then she said it. The thing we'd both been circling for weeks. "What are we doing?" Her voice wasn't sharp. It was exhausted. Scared, maybe. Like she was asking herself the question, too. I wanted to say something. Anything. To make it make sense. But there was no right word for the space we'd built between glances and unspoken things. She took a step closer, the edge of her coat brushing my arm. I could feel the warmth of her, the electricity of almost. "I tell myself this is harmless," she said quietly. "But every time I leave, I feel wrong." I didn't breathe. Her eyes glistened in the dim light, tired and searching. "You don't understand what this does to me," she whispered. "You make me remember who I used to be." I wanted to reach for her, but my hands stayed still. Maybe out of fear. Maybe respect. Maybe both. She took another step back, her voice shaking. "I can't keep walking into this place like it's nothing." "Then don't," I said, even though the words cut as I said them. She nodded once, looking at the floor. "I wish I'd met you when I was allowed to want something." And with that, she turned, opened the door, and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the faint echo of everything we couldn't say. ChatGPT said, I didn't see her for almost a month after that night. The air felt different without her. Too still, too easy to pretend nothing had happened. Then one morning, the mail came in a small brown envelope with my name scrawled across it in handwriting I recognized instantly. Inside was a folded note and an old photo. The photo was faded, two people standing beside a red car, smiling. She looked younger, maybe my age. The man beside her wasn't her husband. The note said only, I thought I buried this part of my life. Turns out I just left the door open. I didn't know what to do with that. I sat at the counter, turning the picture over in my hand until the grease smudged its edges. Later that afternoon, she walked in. No warning, no hesitation. Just walked straight up to me like she'd made a decision she didn't like, but couldn't take back. You got it, she asked. I nodded, showing her the photo. She exhaled, relief and dread in the same breath. That was a long time ago, she said. He was my brother's best friend. We were close. He died in a crash. I was the one driving. The room went silent, even though the machines were still humming. She looked away, jaw trembling just enough for me to notice. I told myself I could move on if I never looked at this picture again, she said. But then I met you. I didn't know what to say. My mind searched for something, comfort, logic, but all I felt was the ache in her voice. You remind me of him, she continued. Not your face, not your voice. It's the way you listen. The way you don't fill silence just because it's there. She paused, swallowing hard. It scared me at first. Then I started wanting to see you. And that scared me more. I looked at the photo again, at her younger self smiling like she didn't yet know what regret felt like. "You didn't have to send this," I said softly. "I did," she said. "I needed you to know why I keep running hot and cold. Why I walk away before you can ask me to stay." Her voice cracked at the word stay. She blinked fast, like she was holding back the tide. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that I wasn't trying to replace anyone. But something told me she already knew. "I don't want you to feel sorry for me," she said finally. "I just needed you to see that I'm not someone you can fix." I nodded. "I never wanted to fix you." She gave me a look I still can't describe, part disbelief, part relief, part something she didn't want me to notice. Then she reached for the photo, hesitated halfway, and instead let her hand rest on mine. "Just for a second. You're the first person I've told," she whispered. "Please don't make me regret it." Her hand trembled as she pulled away, and even though she left right after, I swear I could still feel her pulse against my skin long after the door closed. It happened quietly, like something that had already begun long before either of us admitted it. A few days after her confession, she stopped by again. No pretext this time, no broken car or borrowed excuse. Just her. She stood in the doorway, the late afternoon light cutting a soft halo around her. "I was driving nearby," she said, though we both knew that wasn't true. I just nodded. "You can come in." She did, slowly, like she was testing the air for danger. We didn't talk at first. She watched me finish what I was doing, tightening a belt, wiping down the counter, pretending not to notice the way her eyes lingered on every movement. When I finally looked up, she smiled, barely. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. "Sometimes." "What stops you?" I shrugged. "Maybe I'm waiting for something that makes staying worth it." Her lips parted like she wanted to answer, but she just nodded and sat down on the workbench. The same one where we'd shared coffee weeks ago. The same one where we'd said too much and not enough. "I keep trying to stay away," she said after a long silence. "But every time I do, I feel like I'm walking in circles." I put down the wrench, then stopped walking. She looked up. Her eyes were tired, but not sad, just full. "You make things sound so simple. They only feel complicated when we lie about what's already true." Her laugh came out shaky. "And what's true?" "That this," I said quietly, motioning between us, "stopped being harmless a long time ago." She didn't argue, didn't even blink. Just let the words hang there between us, soft and undeniable. After a while, she stood, stepping closer. Not a deliberate move, just natural, like gravity finally doing what it's supposed to. She was close enough now that I could see the faint line at the corner of her mouth when she breathed in. "I don't want to ruin you," she whispered. "You won't," I said. "We're already past the part where pretending saves anyone." For a long moment, we just stood there, her hands at her sides, mine clenched around nothing. The smell of oil and rain still clung to the air. Then, quietly, she reached up and rested her forehead against mine. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a touch meant to last. Just a moment suspended in stillness. Honest, fragile, necessary. I could feel her heartbeat against the small space between us, uneven and human. "I can't promise anything," she said, barely audible. "I'm not asking you to." Her hand came up then, brushing my cheek. An unsteady, fleeting gesture that carried more truth than any confession could. We stayed like that for a few breaths, the world outside fading into the hum of machines and the faint sound of rain starting again. When she finally pulled back, there was no drama, no breaking point. Just two people who had run out of ways to lie to themselves. She whispered, "Maybe this is enough," and I knew she didn't mean forever. But for that moment, it was. It's strange how certain moments outlive everything else. Not the big ones, the quiet ones. The smell of rain on her coat, the sound of her laugh breaking through a heavy silence, the way she said my name when she thought no one would ever hear it again. It's been months now. The shop looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same. Every corner carries a memory, a ghost of what was never supposed to happen. Sometimes I still catch myself glancing at the door when it opens, half expecting her to walk in. She never does. And somehow that's okay. People like to think love is about promises, about holding on. But what I learned, what she taught me, is that sometimes love is what happens when you finally stop trying to control it. When you let it exist exactly as it is. Messy, temporary, alive for the moment you were both brave enough to share it. I still remember our last conversation. She didn't say goodbye. She just said, "You'll be fine." And I believed her, even though I didn't want to. Because she didn't mean without her. She meant with myself. That's the part one never saw coming. That what we built, quiet and fragile as it was, wasn't really about being together. It was about seeing ourselves clearly for the first time. She found something she thought she'd lost. I found something I didn't know I needed. Stillness, patience, the kind of understanding that doesn't need words. Sometimes I replay the night she rested her forehead against mine. There wasn't a declaration, no promise of tomorrow. Just two people who had run out of lies and were brave enough to be honest for a few breaths. I used to think that wasn't enough. Now I know it was everything. I've seen her once since then, across a cafe window on a busy street. She didn't notice me, or maybe she did and chose not to show it. Her hair was shorter, her smile quieter. She looked lighter, and that was enough. I paid for my coffee, stepped outside, and didn't follow her. For the first time, I didn't need to. Because some stories don't end, they settle. They become part of the air you breathe, the music in the background of ordinary days. You carry them, not like a wound, but like a reminder. That connection doesn't have to last forever to be real. And if I ever see her again, I don't think we'll talk about what happened. We'll just nod, maybe smile, knowing we both survived it. And that, somehow, is its own kind of love. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?